What it is. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Third Intermission Podcast. This is your boy Dave signing on for this lovely summer evening here in Ontario. Of course, you can catch us on the socials at Toronto Third on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram, and you can get us wherever you get your podcasts from. That includes Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Apple, and our friends over at Podbean. We got the ones and twos here out here this evening. Of course, you got myself and you got the right hand of the king, aka the Fedora Man, Avery McDougall, coming to you live from Edmonton, Alberta. Edmonton is currently rocking right now after going with a 1-1 split in the Stanley Cup final with the Florida Panthers. Avery, how are you doing right now, given the fact that the city is once again in the limelight when it comes to the NHL?
Dave, let me tell you, being around the Cup final, being around everything that goes into it, covering the games, the events, I'm tired. This has been a long year, and I'm enjoying it, but man, it is exhausting being around everything in the Cup final, covering it, all the games, and let me tell you something, with the series tied 1 game apiece, going into game 1, even before we dropped the puck for this series to open, the decibel levels inside Rogers Place were ridiculous. Over 100 decibels during pregame, before the puck was dropped. This is a market that, you talk about hostile buildings around the NHL. Edmonton is easily one of the more hostile arenas in all of hockey, bar none. And it was great to see in game 1 the big boys step up, like Leon Draisaitl getting the game winner in overtime, and we saw Stuart Skinner step up in an overtime session. But one thing that we all know about this series is that the Florida Panthers, Leaf fans know it well. When you think you have the Panthers dead to rights, they tell you, nope, we ain't dead.
At that point.
Yup. As we saw, they came back. They won in game 2. Brad Marchand, overtime winner, double OT. That is a team that has enough weapons to make this a long, beat 'em up, drag 'em out series, which is what we're going to get as things shift back to Sunrise, Florida. You have to capitalize on your chances to make sure this Panthers team is dead, because if you do not, they will make you pay. We saw Edmonton went 1 for 6 on the power play in game 2. That came back to bite them. And like I said on the top there, Leaf fans, if you cannot capitalize on killing the Florida Panthers, it will come back to bite you.
It really will. And essentially speaking, the fact that, say, Edmonton jumped out to that 1-0 lead, jumped out to that 1-0 lead back in game 1. And it was a beautiful start with Leon Draisaitl just scoring 66 seconds in. And then, of course, Florida returning the favor in game 2, opening the scoring with just under 2 minutes to start. It really does set the tone for everything. It really does set the tone for the entire series, because now essentially, not only do you have storylines drawn, it's you have some animosity building up between these two teams. And it's with the fact that, say, Edmonton had ample opportunities to try and take a 2-0 series lead, Sergei Bobrovsky basically saved Florida's bacon in that situation. And you know what? Kudos to him for standing on his head during until that Corey Perry tying goal. Kudos to him for standing on his head during single overtime and double overtime. And ideally speaking, he's the only reason why Florida was not down 2-0 in that series, or in this series. So ideally speaking, it's now essentially a best of 5, but you really have some great storylines being drawn out in the situation outside of the usual suspects in Carter Verhaeghe, Matthew Tkachuk, and Sam Bennett, just to name a few names. Especially for Florida. So this is something that's could be completely historic in this situation. It could also be a nightmare depending on how the next 2 games in Florida roll out. Because game 3 goes down Monday, game 4 goes down Wednesday, I believe. Wednesday or Thursday. And it's like, unless this series decides to, take a nice turn and go 7 like we all want it to, it's not going to be pretty.
No, not at all. You mentioned animosity. You're seeing again, and these are two teams. We saw it in last year's series. We're seeing it now again. The chippiness from both these teams has been amplified. I mean, we saw Sam Bennett again doing what Sam Bennett does with his act, where he tries to fall on goaltenders or try to get under players' skin. We saw him, the fall push Sean Stewart Skinner in Game 2, and
Yep.
that is again that's a team that's going to go deep into the dark arts of what they need to do. And Edmonton, here's the thing though, Edmonton isn't backing that. Last year, Edmonton, they didn't know they came across as a team that was just trying to figure out what to do in a cup final. Now they ain't taking no BS. You're seeing them
Oh,
pushing back against the Florida Tricks.
what was that saying? Papa don't take no mess. Like Edmonton ain't taking no mess in this situation either. And you know what? Like I don't blame them for feeling that way right now. Because it's like two's like, listen, if you want to catch these hands one time, like best believe run into my goalie one more time. You're catching a Defaz with a hockey stick. That's pretty much what it is at this point.
Yeah, no, they
And
are not. They are not tolerating any of those antics around Stuart Skinner, and nor should they. And for Florida, yeah, the fact that Florida, we've seen how guys like Verhage, Kachuk, they've been pretty quiet, but other guys like Marchand, Nate Schmidt, Seth Jones, they have been stepping up. And for Game 3, it's going to be key for Florida for those big guys to step up one more time. And same for Edmonton. You're going to need stronger. You're going to need, again, your top guns, but you're also going to need the depth guys to wake up a little bit more, because in Game 2, the Edmonton's depth wasn't what it needed to be at. So we'll see what happens there, because this, again, we said before all postseason long how vital it is for your depth to step up, how you need all 4 lines on a roster to come through in a playoff series. And
mm-hmm.
Game 3 is going to be fun tomorrow night. That is going to be a tough, tough battle no matter what. And again, I've said it before, I don't think we're going to get a game where I don't see in this series an 8-1 game or just a blowout. Every game in this series is going to be a 2-goal game at the most. This is going to be a tight series rest of the way, Dave.
For real. And it's one of those knockdown, drag them out, just knuckle dragging brawls between like two teams that are who basically know each other at this point. Like even with the amount of additions that have been made and the amount of firepower that had been lost over the offseason, like these two teams like basically know exactly who the hell they are and who the other team is. And like essentially speaking, in this particular situation, you really have to sit and realize that like in this particular point right now, it's a massive coin toss between the two of them. And I feel like Game 3 is massively pivotal in this situation, because it's like not only do you have to worry about, say, can Edmonton stop Marchand and Bennett from scoring, because ideally Bennett happens to be the top goal scorer within the NHL playoffs right now. Brad Marchand, of course, with his 10th overtime winning goal in Stanley Cup playoff history. Like, I feel like Draisaitl's the only other player that might be able to catch up with these guys, but like I don't hear anything about Connor McDavid going into Game 3 right now. And Homeboy has like what, maybe an assist or two?
He had 3 assists in Game 2. He had 3 assists in Game 2. He had
Okay,
a
yeah,
nasty.
sorry, excuse me for that.
Yeah, no, Connor's been active.
Although I do need him to be a scoring nightmare, so that's something that we obviously have to worry about in the situation.
Well, here's the thing: when Connor wants to shoot, there's not many people can handle when Connor wants to get a shot off. Like that's the kind of guy who's scary. But also too, Evan Bouchard. He's someone who, once again, if Edmonton wins this Cup final, Dave, I have a sneaky dark horse pick for the Conn Smythe, and it's Evan Bouchard, who once again is being a point machine from the back end, and is still second all time in playoff points per game for a defenseman, only behind Bobby Orr, all time.
That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. You think like you wouldn't think about these things at all, but like, these are very small, minute things that you would not catch in that situation. So obviously, it is something to think about. Of course, folks, just tuning if you're just tuning in. Of course, Game 3 and Game 4 is in Sunrise, Florida, at the BB&T Bank Center in Sunrise. Of course, the Stanley Cup final is tied at 1 game apiece. Leon Draisaitl scoring that big overtime winner with about a little over 30 seconds left in Game 1, and then Brad Marchand scoring late into double overtime to give Florida that 5-4 win and take Game 2 back on Friday night. Although I find it extremely weird that there's a hockey game on a Friday night as opposed to a Saturday, but then again, I digress. But it is what it is. Like we said, this series could easily go 6 or 7, depending on how these two teams grind it out. So obviously, we're going to keep an eye on things for you, and we will catch you all up when the action happens. Some other stuff to talk about during the last week. Of course, first things first. Some awards have officially been released. For example, the Jack Adams Award. Of course, if you are not familiar with, say, the individual awards in the NHL, the Jack Adams Award is for Coach of the Year, and this year's recipient happens to be Spencer Carberry, and I'm going to let Avery talk about this real quick. So go right ahead. The floor is yours.
Yeah, well deserved job for Spencer Carberry, what he's done for Washington this year. The Capitals were a 50-win team, and he becomes the 4th coach in Capital history to win a Jack Adams Award, and also first person to win Coach of the Year in the NHL, AHL, and ECHL. So that's a very cool honor for Carberry. He got the most out of a veteran team that I think some people might have thought Washington might have would start to have that decline this year. They shocked. They proved that no, they're still here. They had 111 points this season. That Capitals team still has a lot of juice in the tank, and Carberry was a major factor in this team having a nice postseason. I mean, yes, you lost in round 2, but that is a team that I don't think people really saw being able to be a 110-point or 51-win team anymore. I think people thought they were going to start to have that slow decline with Ovi getting older. I mean, again, Ovi shocked us all. I mean, yes, of course, Ovi got to 39 goals, broke the Gretzky record. But after he broke his leg, I don't think people really thought the Capitals were going to be a threat after he had the leg injury. Came back. Washington didn't miss a beat. So great job to Spencer Carberry. I guess the big thing is that at times there's always a bit of a decline the next year after you win the Jack Adams Award as a head coach. So if the Capitals come back again and improve upon that, I will be very impressed. But Spencer Carberry did a masterful job in DC this year, Dave.
He really did. And you know what? Like just to further on your point, that Capitals team was just a real shock just coming out of the gate. You wouldn't have expected Washington to like at least be able to have a playoff spot, let alone be atop of the Metropolitan Division, and just essentially destroy most teams, with the exception of Carolina. Of course, Carolina played some great hockey at that point, but like again, like there was just too much riding on that Washington team alone, and the fact that they were maybe just a few points shy of winning the President's Trophy once again in franchise history. The sky, like, I don't think there's really like any limit to what this team can endure going forward. Of course, next year is obviously going to be a little bit of a crapshoot, considering that, say, these guys are getting older now. We don't know if Tom Wilson's still going to be around. Will the roster still look the same come July 1st when free agency hits? Will this be Ovi's last season? You know, there's so many other variables at play in this situation. So, of course, we all want to just keep an eye on everything and see like how far Ovi gets before he decides to hang up his skates and call it a career. You know, it would be nice for Washington to ride off into let me rephrase that. It would be nice for Ovechkin to ride off into the sunset with a Stanley Cup or with a second Stanley Cup ring. But of course, we're all waiting for the Leafs to finally get their shit together and get themselves number 14. I think this might actually be the last year that the Leafs are currently on the stand or are in the current ring of the Stanley Cup. I could be wrong though.
Yeah, if it's not this year, it's next couple of years in which if they don't win soon, they'll be off the cup.
Exactly. And I think like, you know what, like it's one of those situations where it's like this is now something that Toronto really has to lock in on. Because the fact that you still have five of the other original six teams on the Stanley Cup, the most recent one being, I believe, Boston from 2000. No, sorry, not Boston,
Yeah,
Chicago from
Chicago.
2015, right? Like you still have Montreal from '93, who are still heavily on the ring, or I'm sorry, still heavily on the presentation cup. Um, you also have the Rangers in '94, the Red Wings who last won back in 2008, um, Blackhawks in 2015, Bruins in 2011. You know, for the league to have like its most richest franchise basically off one of the most coveted trophies in all of professional sport, it's like it's kind of a slap in the face not only to the Toronto Maple Leafs hockey organization, but it's also a slap in the face to the NHL in general. And more importantly to Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. And it's like obviously with the fact that like every single team has the same ability as the next team to try and get themselves on the Stanley Cup. Toronto really has to find a way to do that. And you know what? Like it's one of those things that we have to keep tying into. But you know what? That's a different story. And you know, it'd be nice to actually have a coach that would be able to win the Jack Adams Award again, like Pat Burns or Pat Quinn. And we haven't had a coach that's been able to do that in years. But you know, it's one of those things that's gonna have to happen eventually, rather than just sit there and just hope and pray at this point. So we'll see what happens. Next, we are going to look at the Bill Masterson Trophy. Now, of course, folks, some of these trophies obviously do have different meanings. The Bill Masterson Trophy is one of it's the most sportsmanship. Let me rephrase that. It's the award for the player that exemplifies the most sportsman gentlemanly like qualities within the NHL community. And I do not have any doubts or regrets or any concerns as to who practically won this award. And of course, Sean Monahan is extremely deserving of it. Of course, folks, if you do remember, say, like within the last year or two, both the Gaudreau brothers were killed in a hit and run by say a very drunken idiot in New Jersey. And of course, like it was a very devastating thing for the hockey community as a whole. Of course, Johnny Hockey was like a very prominent figure, not only within the Blue Jackets organization, but also say within the Flames organization, and was well loved by many players. And of course, his brother
No, Matthew Gaudreau.
and Johnny and Matthew, of course, were like heavy, but Johnny was for two bright lights to be snuffed out by someone who was very ignorant. It's one of those eye opening things. And of course, with Monahan just not only helping out the Gaudreau family, but also just being a leader off of the ice and just being that focal point for the Blue Jackets organization and of course the fan base to rally around as the Blue Jackets were trying to cope with the loss. I don't believe that anybody else should have been more deserving of that trophy other than him.
Yeah, it's a great now. Personally, I do believe maybe I'll say it on a different show, but I do believe that the Masterton should be honored to all players who are nominated by the teams. But either way, point being right now that Sean Monahan is a great recipient, and I've had the chance to meet Sean a few times, interview him more than once on my own platforms, and Sean Monahan is a gentleman, lovely dude, great player, and he has stepped up in a major way to be a Blue Jackets leader, be someone who has been a rock of strength and support to the Gaudreau family, because the reason why Sean Monahan signed in Columbus was to be with Johnny Gaudreau. those two were best friends, and he didn't want nothing more than to play with his buddy Johnny on that Blue Jackets team. And NHL.com posted a video of Meredith Goudreau presenting Sean Monahan with the Masterton Trophy at his home. And again, he is the uncle to the Goudreau kids. He was essentially a brother to Johnny. So to see him still be involved in the Goudreau life and to see the Goudreaus pay him back and know how much it meant to knows how Sean meant to that family. It was amazing to
Hmm.
see, and that's someone who is going to honor Johnny's legacy for a very long time, and he's already a beloved figure in Columbus for how he has stepped up how he's become a leader in that market, and also too for his play. And again,
Hmm.
Sean Monahan's career, he's had his ups and downs with his health, trying to stay in the lineup. But this year, he comes back this year in Columbus, rallies Columbus, almost getting back into the postseason, has a 57-point campaign. So great to see Sean Monahan being honored in that way for what he's been able to do on and off the ice with the Goodrow family and in Columbus, Ohio.
And you know, when the NHL awards take place on Thursday, obviously you are going to see something that will not only but you are going to see a whole lot of awards that are presented as well. Like for example, the Art Ross, the Hart Trophy, the of course the Executive of the Year award. I don't even know if they have like an actual name for that trophy yet. I could be wrong. Um,
The Jim, yeah, it's called the Jim Gregory Award, the
oh,
Jim Gregory.
okay. And of course, say some other trophies that have officially been released as well. Um, you know, to see that award ceremony before the Stanley Cup final is actually a nice touch instead of seeing it after, like say most leagues do. Um, it's kind of cool. So hopefully we get to see some of these guys receive their flowers and just get get the recognition that they deserve for their individual accomplishments before the Stanley Cup is handed out, and just have a great night of respect not only for like say the league but also for you know for hockey in general, which would be extremely significant. So we're very excited to see what comes forward come Thursday night. All right, switching gears here, we're going to go to the P-Dub, and of course, there's some bombshell news coming ahead of the expansion draft, which will be happening on June the 12th, which is this coming Thursday. Um, some major news, some major moves that have already been installed into the P-Dub. Of course, Toronto legend, and just all around just lovable sweetheart Sarah Nurse has signed with Vancouver of all teams, and this was a massive bombshell to PW or sorry to Scepter fans because of course when the names were released for the expansion draft and Nurse wasn't one of them, you sat there and wondered what the hell was going on in the situation and what was Toronto thinking in order to be able to like say protect not be able to protect the players that they should have protected in that situation. There were some other notable names that were left off as well, and we're going to break that down momentarily. Um, of course, as well, Hillary Knight, one of the most I guess one of the most not notorious but famous American hockey players within women's hockey alone. She has decided to sign with Seattle, and now that you have two of the biggest names signed with two expansion teams as veteran leadership, you now have to sit and wonder like, okay, what's the next domino to fall in this situation? And Avery, I'm going to let you explain how the expansion draft is going to work for the PWHL as say Thursday is quickly approaching.
And actually, correction, yeah, actually, it's actually June 9th that the PWHL draft, expansion draft is happening. But I do want to say that, yeah, I think everybody in hockey was surprised to see Sarah Nurse not protected by Toronto. She's now going to PWHL Vancouver. Hillary Knight is now a part of PWHL Seattle. And of course, there was the exclusive signing window which teams could sign a maximum of 5 players before the expansion draft, and those lists of players include outside of Nurse and Knight, Claire Thompson, Sophie Jakes, Emirates Mashmar, and Jen Gardner for Vancouver. And Seattle took Kayla Barnes, Alex Carpenter, Corrine Schroeder, and Danielle Serdachny. So both Vancouver and Seattle getting some heavy hitters going into the 2026 season. And that mainly is because the expansion rules, you can only protect a few players. Like it's like the NHL expansion draft where you could protect virtually half your team or protect a lot of players. 4 players could be protected in the expansion draft. So a lot of top talents are exposed on every other roster around the league, and some people are mad about that because with so few players you can protect, people are saying, oh, you're going to tear apart our established teams, you're giving too much leeway to the new teams. But I like that because clearly the PWHL wants Vancouver and Seattle to come out of the gate hot. They don't want to see Vancouver and Seattle coming out in year one struggling or barrel the bot or at the bottom of the league next year. So there are pros and cons. I mean, you want your new markets to have success early on, I believe. I don't think it's good for a league to have expansion teams struggling for 4, 5, 6 years. So I like the fact that you're going to see Danielle Serdachny doing her thing in Seattle immediately. You're going to have Sarah Nurse in Vancouver. You're going to have elite players on these teams from the jump. And also makes the GMs do a little bit more strategy in terms of who do you protect, who do you leave exposed, because again, I like the fact you can't protect everybody. You're gonna lose somebody. And obviously, I mean, great example is a team like New York. You lose Alex Carpenter, but you gotta make sure you protect Mika Zandy Hart. You gotta make sure you protect Sarah Fillier. And again, same for Ottawa. You lose Danielle Serdachny, but you got to make sure you keep Gwyneth Phillips and Emily Clark. I mean, look at Ottawa. I mean, yes, Emirates Mashmar unfortunately got hurt, but Gwyneth Phillips played marvelously against Minnesota in the Walter Cup. Showed that she could be Ottawa's #1 goaltender going forward. And even though, like you mentioned, yes, you lose Mashmar, but Gwyneth Phillips is your future now in net. And again, Toronto, you got to protect Blair Turnbull. You got to protect Renata Fast. So, yes, you do lose players like a Sarah Nurse. So, it's a balancing act. And I do like that next year we're going to see these expansion teams coming out, most likely being really good.
The only other thing we have to worry about as well is like, okay, what are those team names going to be come, say, November 1st or say December 1st when the season starts? So now that we have Vancouver, Seattle, we could potentially have a proper Western Conference. Um, Obviously, Toronto might be involved in that situation, considering there's only 8 teams in the league right now. So, of course, with the Walter Cup, might be looking at expansion in when it comes to the playoff system. Of course, you could still have your top 4 get in, but like again, like that's still up for debate, and that's still up for debate when it comes to the PWHL committee. Um, but
Well,
right
yeah,
now, as it stands, like it's just the second Vancouver and Seattle come in and hit the ground running, it's like you now have the opportunity to make sure that you have a couple extra teams, and one in the East and one in the West, when it comes to expansion in 2026. So that's something that we also have to look forward to as well.
Mhm. And yeah, and again, we don't know a timeline for further expansion. I think the
Mhm.
league is just gonna try and see how they're gonna get through 2026 right now. We don't know what the plans are. There's plans for more teams at 27 and 28, but we'll wait and see how things go right now in Seattle and Vancouver. But again, great to see the league pulling the trigger on expansion westward, which is needed. And it was coming out. I believe I heard that the whole thing was that to try and further get a possible TV deal or a better TV deal in America, they were going to eventually have to come out west, which we already know that was a big thing. But I'm excited to see what happens. I'm definitely excited to see how Seattle and Vancouver roll. And again, like you said, I'm excited to see what Vancouver is gonna do, because you look at that Vancouver roster right now. I know it's only 5 players so far, but
Mhm.
you get a team that has Sarah Nurse there. She's someone who is, I think, definitely going to be an impact player on that roster for whatever the Vancouver team is going to be named. But also, too, Seattle with Hillary Knight and Daniel Serdachny. That's going to be a fun duo to watch in the Pacific Northwest. That's going to be definitely fun to watch right there. But again, you're also, too, and look at Emirates Bashmar. She is someone who, when she's healthy, she's a really solid net minder. Really, really good. So I
Mhm.
want to see I want to see what she can do to get things on track again in Vancouver when she's fully healthy next year.
Well, again, it's something that we're really excited to, just look into and know, hopefully just see where it goes because like obviously I don't mind going to PW games now and they're a lot of fun and it would be nice to finally see a team in Edmonton or see another team out east in say I don't know Washington or Pittsburgh or even Detroit for that matter. So obviously there's a lot of potential for this league and if they can get on the same level as the NHL would be, then maybe women's hockey can find say something a little more concrete.
Well,
Um,
what does that mean? They don't need to be on the same level. That's their own thing. They're their own
well,
thing.
no,
They don't. Yeah, yeah.
I don't mean playing wise. I mean like say on like the same level, like say TV wise. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
Is that
no, I agreed. I agreed. I want to see a broader TV deal in America. I do want to see it happen. I mean, we do have a great setup right now in America, in Canada, where there's games on TSN, Sportsnet, and CBC, or it have been on CB in the past. So I want to see a better TV deal for the PWHL in the US because we know there's regional broadcast rights, but I do want to see a better national deal for the PW down south.
yeah, of course. So it is something to obviously take into consideration, and like we are going to keep an eye on that as well. So, of course, it's going to be a lot of fun when the expansion draft happens on Monday, and we will update you with the results for that.
Mhm.
Last but not least, we're just gonna dive into a couple things really quickly here. Of course, the Kelly Cup playoffs. The ECHL has officially ended with the team from Quebec, the Trois Rivières Lions, actually winning the Kelly Cup in 5 games. Um, they actually won as a Friday night. Um, I don't think you caught any of those. Did you? Did you, Avery?
Not really that easy to watch ECHL in Edmonton, but still very cool to see Trois Rivières win over the Toledo Walleye in a standing room crowd in Trois Rivières. So that's really cool to see that
Mhm.
the Kelly Cup will be in Canada once again. The second Canadian team to win the CHL title, joining the Newfoundland Growlers, who won it back in 2019. So
Yep.
that's dope to see. That is dope to see that we get another pro hockey champion in Canada. So great to Trois Rivières, great to the Lions to see them get that victory.
Of course. And then, of course, finally with the Calder Cup playoffs, just winding down and getting into the final. Of course, Charlotte is awaiting the winner of the conference finals between Abbotsford and Texas. Right now, of course, Charlotte did end up sweeping Laval 4-0, and would have been a nice sweep for say the Montreal Canadiens organization, as Trois Rivières and Laval are both owned by the Montreal Canadiens.
Mhm.
Of course, would be nice to see essentially see a Kelly Cup, Calder Cup, and a Stanley Cup within the same organization. But of course, that's just a bit of a pipe dream. So we'll
Mhm.
obviously keep an eye on things there as well. Um, that's pretty much it for this episode. Real short and sweet. Uh, so of course, thank you, Avery, for coming through this evening, and of course, thank you to the listener for letting us create the space in between the head talk. We will be back with another episode next week. Um, keep your eyes and ears open as we will potentially drop another date for Third Intermission Live episode 2. And of course, the third intermission live episode, inaugural live episode, excuse me, has been posted. So make sure you listen to that. It might be a little a little bit echoey, but I promise you, it's still a good listen. Wouldn't you agree, Avery?
No, yeah, we'll work on getting that audio up for the first live show episode. You can tap in and see and hear how things went because we want you to enjoy what you might have missed out upon. So whenever we get whenever that next show happens, which again, that's not anytime soon. We got things to work out before we get there, but we want to give you a taste of what it's like to be at a live show with your people.
Exactly. All right, folks. So until next time, make sure you drink your water, mind your business, and deuces.